guys, so today's video is going to be my favorite video that I film every month, and that is going to be my March reading wrap up for all the books that I read in the month of March. I read 18 books this month, which is actually pretty fucking good. I always start out like, a little bit reading slumpy, like I've said before. I always start out like kind of like not feeling like I want to read at the beginning of the month, and then once I get into reading more books and get into my groove again, then I pretty much, get through books pretty fast. So we're going to talk about the books that I read in the month of March. I just wanted to say before I get into all the books that I read, is the books that I didn't get to on my TBR. I think I need to start doing that every month and actually telling you guys which books that I didn't end up getting to. I think that would be, a more accurate explanation, but also like kind of to hold myself accountable, but at the same time, like why am I holding myself accountable for just enjoying the books that I'm reading? Or if I decide to pick up a book that's not on my TBR, it's not at the end of the world. Like, I do like mood reading sometimes. So I did get to most of the books on my TBR this month. The only ones that I didn't get to was, unfortunately, I again did not get to the Hunger Games trilogy. I know. How is it that I still have not read the Hunger Games trilogy? I honestly wish that I would have read this over the trilogy that I ended up reading, because I ended up not really liking that trilogy that much. But you'll see what I ended up reading over the Hunger Games. But I still ended up reading, I believe, 4 series this month, so that's still a lot. Most of them were duologies, but I also didn't get to the King of Scars and Rule of Wolves duology by Leigh Bardugo. Yet again this month, I have put it on my TBR literally the past 3 months. So I'm like, I really did want to get to it at the end of this month, but also I felt so pressured to finish longer books at the end of the month that it's like I should have gotten to them earlier in the month, but I just ended up not reading them because I ended up reading other books that were still on my TBR. And then the last book I ended up not getting to, of course, was Billy Summers by Stephen King. I still have not read that book. And that book has been on my TBR the longest over the Hunger Games and King of Scars and Rule of Wolves, even though, yes, of course, Hunger Games has been on my TBR for forever, but I'm talking about my more recent TBR. And also, I didn't end up reading The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. I was trying to borrow Sunrise on the Reaping from my library, but every time I was trying to hold it, it was not available yet. Like, it wasn't even listed on Libby. And then when I tried to get it, of course, like everyone and their mother ended up putting the hold on it, and it says like a 6-week wait now. So I think I'm just gonna wait to read all of them until it's finally ready. I probably should place a hold on it because I just ended up not doing it. But I'll do it when I can. It's not like a huge priority for me because I still need to read the original trilogy. So let's go ahead and jump into the 18 books that I read this month. So the very first book that I ended up reading this month was actually an ARC that I was really, really excited to receive. So I just think it's so cool that I'm even receiving advanced reader copies. I think it's like, it's just so freaking cool. Like, it doesn't matter, like, if you have a following, as long as you write reviews and post them, and then you link your page of where you review books, and if they see whether or not you're just literally just reviewing books, then they can approve you for the ARCs that you request. So the very first ARC that I got to read this month is The Hollow Hunt by Margie Fuston. This book is technically not even out until April 1st, and today is March 31st. By the way, I'm filming this on the last day of the month because I know I'm not going to finish a book today. These are all the books that I was able to finish in March. I'm currently reading a new release, but I know I'm not going to finish it today. I literally just started it like 2 hours ago. So anyway, I was able to pick this up, though, at Barnes & Noble, like almost a week before it comes out Maybe they released it early to see if it like sells more, but actually originally this book was supposed to come out the last week of March, and I believe it was supposed to come out either like March 25th or 26th. But hey, I ended up being able to get it. And also, like, I knew that I wanted to buy a physical copy of this because look at how stunning this cover is. Like, are you fucking kidding me? So this was the second and final book in the Revenant Games duology. I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. So let's go ahead and talk about it and start doing my makeup. So I'm getting ready to see my friend. So this book follows, let me just go ahead and bring up my review because sometimes I can forget what I actually said. So if you guys didn't know, this book basically picks up right after the first book leaves off. I really wish that this book was a trilogy though, because even though I did really enjoy this, it's still very fast paced. I really love the way that Margie Fuston writes. She has like a really good balance of like the action, but I actually feel like there was kind of a bit of a lack of the romance in this, also because Bly and Kerrigan kind of start out to be enemies in this book because of the way that the first book ended. I'm not going to tell you how it ended, obviously, because that's a spoiler, but I'm just going to tell you guys that Bly pretty much lost everything at the end of the first book, and you end up like feeling just really bad for Bly's character. I don't know why I keep on wanting to call her Blythe, but that's the main character in the third book in the Belladonna series. But basically, it says in the synopsis, if you haven't read the first book, basically she finds her sister again, and her name is Elise, to find her again because they find out that she's not dead. So that's basically like the plot of this book. And also, you find out basically how the witches and vampires powers originated, because they have to go to this hollow pool in order to basically find out like why this rivalry has been going on between the vampires and the witches for basically centuries. And I was a little disappointed though that there wasn't actually another Revenant Games in this book. Like there weren't any trials or what they were competing for and everything, which is fine, but also they kept on talking about how the next Revenant Games was approaching, but there never actually was like a series of trials in this one. So that was like maybe the only thing I was a little disappointed by. And also, I felt like by the time that Kerrigan and Bly finally got back together again, I felt like the romance was a little bit rushed, because it wasn't until like almost 60 or 70% of the way through the book. But it just felt rushed. It's not like I was getting bored with what was happening, because again, she definitely has a way to keep you interested in the plot, and you just like want to find out more and more about what's going to happen. But overall, I thought it was good. And I'm glad that I was able to finish that series this month as well. And the fact that I was able to finish it before it came out, that's like amazing to me. So that was the first book that I read in March. And then the second book that I read, you guys are going to be so proud of me that I finally picked up this damn book. I've had this book for so long, and I absolutely ended up loving it. But the next few books that I'm going to talk about were the books that I read in my 24-hour readathon. So the next book I read was A Witch's Guide to Fake Dating a Demon by Sarah Hawley. I've only read the first one so far. I am definitely planning on picking up the second one in April, and I'm hoping to finish the series in April because I absolutely loved this book. I gave this book a 5 stars. This was just the perfect mix of humor, of romance, of fantasy. This book had a little bit of everything, and it was freaking hilarious. So basically, it's about a demon named, what is his name? Ozroth, and the witch's name is Mariel. So they're the two main characters, and basically Mariel, summons this demon mistakenly, and I feel like that's a common trope or like a common mistake that's made in like witch demon romances. And basically she has to figure out like how to get rid of him, because obviously he's like a demon soul stealing demon, basically. But I just loved every single aspect of this book. I loved like the character arc of Mariel and with her family, because her family basically always wanted her to like, be the best witch that she can be, and they never believed in like what she was doing with her magic, because she's like incredibly good with plants, and she's always been like kind of more of like a herbologist type of witch, like in Harry Potter. But Ozroth, is trying to get back to, obviously hell, and he has to follow the other demons' deals, and he's basically bound to steal Mariel's soul in order for him to go back to hell. But he starts to fall in love with her. And it might have been a tiny bit insta-lovey when they actually do fall in love. But honestly, it was so well done, though, the way that the insta-love happened. But also, like, they didn't, like, fall in love with each other or say that they loved each other until, like, maybe, like, 250 pages in. And maybe that might not be long enough. But honestly, in a romance, it built up the chemistry between them enough for me, even though they were only together like maybe a week or two. You kind of already felt like that they were destined to be together, kind of like differently than the way that like what's the book called? The X Hex and the Kiss Curse does it, where I feel like those books are way more insta-lovey. Like, you never got the feeling that, like, they were destined to be together. But in this book, it wasn't just that, but also, like I said, her family dynamic with her parents, they always, like, were kind of really toxic to her and never really, like, believed in what she was doing when she was, like, amazing at plant magic. And also, like, her friends in the story, it wasn't just about, like, their romance together, but also, like, she had a really good balance of, like, Mariel's two best friends, because she wasn't, like, super isolated. She still wanted to have, like, close relationships in her life. She always wanted her parents to, like, approve of what she was doing. So I just thought it was, like, such a great balance of not just the romantic romance in this, but also about sisterhood and women's friendship. And I just freaking loved this book. And also, like, the spells that happen in this book and the fantasy and everything. I just thought it was such a wonderful, like, magical realism kind of fantasy romance, and I loved it. I thought it was just so well written, and I cannot wait to continue the series with the second book, and again, hopefully finish the series. So that was the second book that I read in March. And then this book was not included in my 24-hour readathon, but I did end up finishing my audiobook that I listened to for the month, and that was The Rom-Commers by Catherine Center. I gave this book a 5 stars. Like, I finally found my second 5-star read by Miss Catherine Center. As you guys know, I've been trying to work on reading Catherine Center's backlist. This is now my 5th book that I've read from her. But this was also the only book that I read from her this year so far. But I really wanted to listen to the audiobook of this one because it's narrated by Miss Catherine Center herself. And this book, you guys, was just so good from beginning to end. It's fucking hilarious. I just love the way that Catherine Center writes her banter, and her humor is just so fucking funny to me. Basically, it's about a screenwriter named Emma Wheeler, and this, like, world famous screenwriter named Charlie Yates. And she basically gets hired by her agent slash best friend. I forget his name, but he's like this British gay guy, and he's so fucking funny. Like, I can't. And she basically gets hired to help Charlie Yates write a rom-com screenplay. And Charlie Yates has never written like a rom-com screenplay in his life. So basically, like, the screenplay that he writes is literally fucking awful. But also, what's her name again? Emma's screenwriting is not famous. She's basically an amateur, but you know, she lives and breathes rom-com screenwriting. So she gets flown into Charlie Yates's house, but also he's like basically her agent, but also he's her best friend. He doesn't tell Charlie or Emma that he didn't communicate this to Charlie to basically work with her to make his screenplay actually good. So she basically just like shows up at his house, and she's like, you didn't tell him that I was gonna help him write this screenplay? Like, what am I supposed to do? Like, she has all of her luggage with her. But basically, he ends up convincing Charlie that he needs her help. And basically, she moves in, and she ends up living with him. And basically, they end up developing a romance, and it just goes from there. And also, her dad has like a debilitating disability. He got injured like really badly, and she has basically like taken care of him her whole life. So she's like really worried about leaving him on his own, but obviously she has a sister, and she ends up taking over, like taking care of their dad. And it was just like so good. Like, the balance of the romance and the real issues that Emma was going through was just like perfectly done. And I hadn't found a 5-star read from Catherine Center since the first book I had read from her, which was Hello Stranger. And this book was just so good. And this one didn't make me as emotional as Hello Stranger. I just thought it was funny. And there was a lot of like real issues in this that I felt like I could relate to. And it was just so good. I really, really liked this book a lot. Okay. Then the next book that I read was the next book that I read in my 24-hour readathon. And that is First Light Wins by Ashley Elson. I think I gave this book a 3.5 stars. This was actually, no, a 3.75, because I do think that this book was well written. It was just like not my type of thriller that I typically read. So basically, after I read this thriller, like I actually forgot that I even read a thriller this month, because honestly, most of the thrillers that I've read this year haven't really hit for me, besides Alice Feeney's Beautiful Ugly, because Alice Feeney has quickly become one of my favorite thriller authors. But this is basically about a woman named Evie Porter, and basically she takes multiple identities throughout the book, because she works for this guy named Mr. Smith, and it's basically like a heist thriller where she has to not really steal money from someone, but more so like steal information. It was very well written, and honestly, I could see this as a movie, and I don't regret reading it. But that's basically what happens, and she is trying to get out of her life with Mr. Smith, and she basically wants to start her own life, and she develops this plan with like the only other person she can trust to get out of this, because he also works for Mr. Smith. And that's basically what happens in this book. There's not really much to it. She's also dating this guy named Ryan, and there's more to him than he's actually telling her, and she can't really like trust him implicitly, but also she's lying to him. So basically, this whole book is about who is really lying to each other and who's telling the truth. So I still thought it was pretty well done. Okay, and then the next book that I read after that, I don't know why this is out of order in the books that I read on Goodreads. Oh, I think it's because I reviewed First Lie Wins after I read this book. But the next book I read was another romance. So I read, I think, 3 romances in this 24-hour readathon, but also they were romances that were on my TBR for a hot second. So the next one I read was Next of Kin by Hannah Bonham Young. This has been on my TBR for a few months now, so I finally decided to get to it. I pretty much wanted to finish Hannah Bonham Young's backlist before the month was over. So I read this, and honestly, I do think that this was Hannah Bonham Young's weakest book to date so far, because I only gave this book a 3.25 out of 5 stars. So this book is about, what's her name? Chloe, and did I put my brow bone highlight on? I don't think I did that yet. No, I didn't. That's why I haven't left to grab my sponge yet. Her name is Chloe, and basically she takes in these 2 foster kids named Warren and Luke. And Warren is like the same age as Chloe, and Chloe has never really had like a mother that she can count on, and her father has been absent from her life, like basically her whole life. And her mother is a struggling alcoholic and a drug addict. So Chloe had to grow up like really fast and like rely on herself to have a lot of the responsibility. But her mother ended up having another baby. And basically it's up to Chloe to try and get this baby from her mother so she can raise this baby herself, even though she's only 24 years old. But the reason why she has to take in these 2 foster kids is she has to prove that she is a responsible enough guardian to take care of her baby sister. So Warren and Luke move in. They're not really too happy about it. Wow, that was like a huge brain fart when they first move in. But as time goes on, her and Warren develop a romance, and that's basically the gist of this book. Pretty much after they developed their romance, like, he was already in love with her, like, by, like, not even 200 pages in. And I was like, I felt like this was very insta-lovey, and it kind of wasn't done the same way as A Demon Witch's Guide, because I was starting to get really bored with this book. And also, this is, you know, I think this is her first book that she had written. So, like, it didn't really have, like, the witty humor or the banter that I'm used to with Hannah Bonham Young's writing. But I also think she was trying to find her niche still, and she was trying to find the way, like, her writing style. It was still a good book, but honestly, it's definitely my least favorite book from her. So yeah, that's basically what I thought of that book. So then we'll get into some more of what I read after I grabbed my sponge. Okay, guys, so the next book I ended up reading in my 24-hour readathon, and this was the last book that I finished in that readathon, was Expiration Dates by Rebecca Surley. This was my first book by Rebecca Surley, and I absolutely loved this book. I gave this a 4.75 out of 5 stars. It was so close to being a 5-star. So close. But this book was wonderful. It was so well written. It was so funny. It was so touching. I cried at one point. It was just such a beautiful way to describe how you live your life and how precious life is. And I just freaking loved it, that I really want to read more books by Rebecca Surley. So basically, it's about a woman named Daphne, and she has this weird kind of almost curse on her. And I thought that this concept was so unique, where basically she receives these slips of paper that basically tell her, like, when her relationship with a man that she's dating is going to expire. It basically tells her when she has to break up with this person because she is not destined to be with them. It can be as long as, like, I can even tell her like when she's gonna have just a one night stand with a guy. Like that's how extreme it is. Or I can tell her that she's gonna be with this guy like a couple of years. Like, move in the whole bit. But she's like been constantly worried that, if she makes that kind of commitment to a guy, like she knows that it's gonna end. So basically the only guy that's been like a constant in her life is this guy named Noah. And they did date eventually, but they remained friends like the whole rest of her time that she ended up dating like other guys. And like you just try to see throughout the whole book whether or not they end up together. But also like her parents have always been like concerned that like, she's not with somebody, and they're kind of like these meddling Jewish parents that honestly made me laugh so hard because like kind of reminds me of my own mom, about like whether or not I'm dating and all of that. But it was just like so beautifully written. And her father has always been like by her side and always been there for her. And he just like says like this beautiful passage to her about like how much he cares about her, how much he loves her. And it just made me cry so much because it was just so beautifully written. But also she has like this condition with her heart. I'm not going to say like exactly what it is, but basically she has to be really careful, but also she's struggling with that. So the fact that she's struggling with that her whole life and also can't, keep a relationship no matter how much she cares about the guy, it's like so sad. But also like, I like that she put in that medical element to her issues, and I ended up really falling in love with her character because like, she's basically commenting on like all the medical issues that humans go through in our whole lives, but she did it in such a great way in only like 275 pages. The only reason why I didn't give it a 5-star is because there was just one thing that Noah did that I didn't really like at the end, but besides that, I loved it. I would highly recommend this book. Okay, so next up, I did end up reading a new release. Remember how I always say that I'm not going to read a new release and then I end up reading like at least 3 or 4? Because I read Promise Me Sunshine, which came out at the same time, the same day as this book did, but I was able to read that in February because I got the arc of it. And then The Hollow Hunt technically was supposed to come out in March, so I read that as well, but it comes out tomorrow. And then I ended up reading this book, which was The Scorpion and the Night Blossom by Amelie Wenzel. I'm just going to tell you right now, I believe I gave this, I think I just gave it a 4 stars. I didn't give it a 4.25, which is still really good. But I just really wanted to read this. First off, this is so beautiful. Like, are you joking? But also, I forgot to mention it in my TBR video for March as a new release, and it ended up being the only new release that I read until like a couple of days ago. But I also like just was craving like a fantasy, and I didn't want to read like a long series, but I ended up reading a series after this anyway. But I wanted to just read something that was short, that only had 1 book out. And this is only going to be a duology. So it's about this girl. What is her name? Anyings? Right? I think that's her name. I'm just going to read the synopsis because it's kind of hard to explain. But basically, she lost her mother's like sanity. And her mother is basically living like a demon. And she has to attend these trials that the gods are holding for humans so she can get her mother's soul back. And it's very, very similar to Song of Silver Flame Like Night and Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White, which was the duology that I read by Amelie Wenzel last year, and it totally ripped my heart out. But that one was more of a fantasy-driven duology, but I kind of felt the romance even more so in that book than this book. I just couldn't really connect to the romance that was in this book, but I really did love the trials, and I really did love the fantasy elements in this book, because Emily Wenzel writes fantasy wonderfully. She like keeps the fantasy element and the magic throughout the entire book, and that's what I love about her writing. I just again couldn't really connect to the romance in this book between the two main characters, but other than that, I really did like it. I don't think I really need to read the synopsis. That's basically what it's about. It's just such an interesting magic system. I know I saw like mixed reviews about this before, but I ended up really enjoying it. I just think like people were bored by the romance element. But, you know, it ended up being devastating at the end, and that's how, and I do think it was a little bit repetitive of the Song of Silver Flame like Night plot, because that's like the same plot that book has, where she has to save her mother's soul. So that's basically what happens. So I don't really need to read about it. Basically demons drink their souls, and there also can be demon-human hybrids, and basically that's what her love interest is. So once she finds that out about him, she can't really think that she can trust him, even though, like, you know, there is a betrayal that happens at one point with him, and she thinks that she can't trust him again, but it's just really, really good. I really enjoyed this book. Okay, so the next three books that I read was part of a series. Let me just put my powder on really quick. But I'm telling y'all right now, I'm actually going to be unhauling these books, but I will mention them in just a second. I just wanted to put my powder on because I need to hurry up already. And the series that I'm talking about is, I'm just going to pull them out of my bag, is the This Woven Kingdom series by Tahara Mafi. So I read all three books in like basically 1 week. And that is This Woven Kingdom, These Infinite Threads, and All This Twisted Glory. Beautiful covers, boring ass series. I'm sorry. I gave every book in this series like a 3 to a 3.5. This is just a 3-star series to me. It's very mediocre. The writing is just, everyone kept on saying like how magical and how beautiful the writing is in this, and I just felt like so bored reading these books. I'm like, this writing is not beautiful, it's just plain old boring. So I'm just gonna give you guys a recap of what this is generally about, but honestly I really couldn't tell you what happened. Oh my god, I just like sprayed this shit out of my face in these books, because I just ended up not caring. But basically it's about the main character named Eliza, or Alize. I don't even know how to say her name. Eliza. It says, clashing empires, forbidden romance, and a long-forgotten queen destined to save her people. This is a first in an epic romantic trilogy inspired by Persian mythology. And I don't know, there was like barely any like fantasy in this. The action there was more action in the first book than there was in the second and third book. And once like we built up to the action that happened in this book, I felt like it was so rushed at the end. But basically, Eliza is like the lost queen of her people, and she is like basically a servant girl, and no one really knows that she is a what is it called? Oh my god, I can't remember the name. A jinn. She's a jinn, which means that she has special powers, and jinn are basically banned in the kingdom, and or if you are a jinn, you have to really keep it a secret. So that's why she is a servant girl. And basically it's kind of like a Cinderella retelling, where like she catches the king's eye, which his name, I believe, what the hell is his name? I forgot already. Cameron. she ends up developing a romance with with Cameron. Why do I keep on wanting to call him Caden? I'm thinking about my shadow daddy in Fear the Flames, which I absolutely loved that book. But anyway, I thought I was really gonna like this series because I really, really love the Shatter Me series, but honestly, I'm still a fan of the Shatter Me series over this one after reading all 3 of these books. It just took forever to get somewhere in these books, and it's like, oh, finally there's something happening. And even the love interest in the second book annoyed me. And I know, like, everybody's like, I love him so much, and I'm like, but I just, like, don't care anymore. So basically Yes? Oh my god. Dumb bitch. So she falls in love with Cameron, but like their romance was just so awkwardly done. And after I had seen like a couple people that I follow review this book and they say like, I'm just gonna DNF the series after reading the first book. And I think Brie Ashford was the one that said this, where she described, and even like the author in like the third book kind of like described their encounters as being awkward. And I was like, I have felt like this the entire time with Alize's and Cameron's romance, where like it was kind of like a forbidden romance, and he kept on like going after her and wanting to be with her, and he kind of like had this like, you know, pull towards her because you almost felt like they were destined to be with each other. But basically I almost felt like that the romance between them was so unnecessarily developed because she doesn't even end up being with him, okay? And this is not even a spoiler because they literally kiss once, and then she's gallivanted off to another land with this guy named, what is his name? Cyrus. And Cyrus becomes the main love interest. And honestly, the only things that I was interested in the second book and the third book was Cyrus's plot and like what happened with him and why he's such a tortured soul. And basically he has a deal with the demon, because there is demons in this as well. But I feel like so many things were introduced in these books but not fleshed out enough, and we ended up concentrating on 2 side characters that I actually liked Cameron's companion a lot more. I forget his name too. Than Eliza's like best friend. I just found her freaking annoying. And also Eliza started annoying me because basically the whole time that she's in Cyrus's kingdom, she doesn't really give Cameron a second thought. Like, there's no, like, internal thoughts of her, like, missing him and saying, like, you know, I need to get back to him. Like, there was no, like, none of that. She gave him, like, a second thought, like, maybe once, and then she started to, you know, fall in love with Cyrus. And, like, I almost felt, like, bad for Cameron because, like, in the third book, she makes it sound like that Cameron like never really truly cared about her, and I'm like, bitch, he like fucking loved you. Like, it was just so bizarre. And then by the third book, you know, we were getting more information about Cyrus and why he has a deal with the devil, and we also got more information about Cyrus's father and what he did and what his curse was, because he like did something really bad that he ended up being cursed by the devil or a demon, whatever. I don't know if they're devils or demons. But again, it was not ever fleshed out enough. And like once we got like an interesting part in the story, we would like go back to like Eliza's, you know, friend. And I'm like, I don't fucking care about this plot point. So like I really struggled to care about Eliza because she just annoyed the shit out of me at that point. Because it's like, how come you're not trying to be back with Cyrus and then you blame him for everything that happened? I don't know. It was just weird. So I don't even feel like talking about this anymore because it just annoyed me. So those are my thoughts on that series. And I think we only have time to possibly talk about like maybe 2 or 3 or more books. If I could, again, speak properly. But basically, like, after I finished that series, I'm like, this didn't really scratch my fantasy itch because, like, there was barely any fantasy in this. And the way that, like, Eliza, like, thought about her powers was just, like, so dumb to me, honestly. She's like, I never thought of my powers as being magical. I'm like, is this bitch dumb? I don't know. It just ended up annoying me. And then there was like this smutty scene with her and Cyrus, like kind of out of nowhere. That was very upper YA, almost like new adult. That I was like, why are we getting so dang frisky right now? It felt like I was reading the Games Gods play, but I felt like the Games Gods play did it better, even though that was supposed to be a YA romantasy. And then there was like a very adult scene between Hades and the main character. I don't remember what her name is. But I'm more excited to read that than continue this series because also the 4th book in this series comes out as well. And since I had loved Shatter Me so much, I mean, Shatter Me had its ups and downs, but overall I still really enjoyed the series and I really cared about the characters. In this series, I just struggled to care about anything that was happening in this book because it was just ending up being boring. So let's just talk about this last duology that I ended up reading because I ended up just going back to 2 authors that I knew that I could rely on to write incredible books. So I had only read one TJ Klune book before, which was Under the Whispering Door, and that was a 6-star read for me. But again, I was kind of struggling as to what I wanted to pick up. But I was like, let me just stick to my TBR and see if I end up loving these next 2 books that I ended up reading. And of course I did. So I ended up reading the Cerulean Chronicles duology by TJ Klune, which was House of the Cerulean Sea and Somewhere Beyond the Sea. House of the Cerulean Sea was a 5-star read for me. It was not a 6-star, but it was a 5-star. And Somewhere Beyond the Sea was a 4.5 for me. I absolutely adored this duology. This was so well done, you guys. But this is also like TJ Klune's most popular book and probably his most beloved book. But I like Under the Whispering Door a little bit more. But I'm so glad that I finally was able to get to more TJ Klune books because that has been a goal of mine this year. Let me just grab my blush and highlight really quick and then we'll finish up filming. Okay, so as you guys know, like I said, I really ended up loving this duology. And basically it's about a man named Linus, and he works for, like, I always forget who he works for. It's called the Care of Magical Youth. And he is sent to this island on, like, this special task where he is supposed to investigate these gifted children that are staying in this house with a man named Arthur Parnassus. And he has to stay there for a decent amount of time to find out whether or not these children are basically a danger to society. And Arthur Parnassus has never been like he's not a legal guardian. He just runs this orphanage technically, but these children have to get adopted eventually. But it ends up being that Arthur wants to be the one that wants to adopt these children because he loves them so much. And that's basically what this duology is about. But Linus and Arthur end up developing this adorable romance. It's so beautiful. Their queer romance is one of the most beautiful romances I've read. But also I just love TJ Klune's representation of the gay and trans community in these books, but also the children in these books are fucking hysterical, and I highly recommend the audiobooks for this. So that's basically what the first book is about, and then the second book, it is more about Arthur's story and how he ended up starting this orphanage, and more so what happened to him. And also is continuing him and Linus's relationship, but also you then find out that another investigator has to be sent to this island. I forget her name, but she's basically like this bird-like kind of creature. And the like children constantly mess with her to get away from their island because they just want to be left alone. But also they think that because these children are with Arthur, they think that he's a bad influence on them because he's also gifted himself, that they want to just take these children away from him. And Arthur does not want that to happen because he cares about them so much. And I just loved this book. It was just such a well done duology. I absolutely adore TJ Klune's writing. The way that he is able to make you escape into a fantasy world, but also has such important messages in these books. Like the second book explores so many political messages like immigration, religion, LGBTQ, the trans community. I could go on for days. I just felt like this book, besides like going into all those wonderful topics that we should discuss more, I just think it was a little bit repetitive with them like messing with the woman from the agency a little bit too much. But also the first book was kind of more so about Linus's loneliness because like basically he only works for the Care Magical Youth, and that was kind of the similarity with Under the Whispering Door. But basically he lives a very lonely life. But when he gets sent to this island, like, he never leaves, like, the city. And, like, once he leaves the city, like, he realizes what beautiful things are out there for him to experience. But then, like, in the second book, Arthur never leaves his house. And he has to go to the city in order to fight for his children. To, like, basically have a hearing in front of the Care Magical Youth to convince them that he wants to care for his children. So I loved that, like, connection between both of them. And the fact that they come from, like, two different worlds, they are very similar. But also the kids were fucking hilarious. Lucy is they're just so funny. Like, Lucy is a basically demon child. Like, he's nicknamed the Antichrist. It is hilarious. And they keep on saying, like, no, he's not an Antichrist. He is so much better than that. And you know that you're better than that, Lucy. It was just so funny. Lucy is short for Lucifer. Okay? It's fucking hysterical. And then, like, another kid is, like, basically a jelly, like a squid. And he wants to be a bellhop. And he wants to be, like, the best bellhop in the world. And it's just so funny. And then there's like this other kid that comes to the island. I think his name is David. He's a Yeti, and he's like the last known Yeti in like the world. And he's like so nervous to come to the island, and also he's older than everybody else, but they end up falling in love with him because they're like, you're just like us. We want to accept you. We want to love you. We know that you're different. But, like, basically, both of these books are about, like, being different and, like, embracing your weirdness. And why is it not okay for someone to love somebody else or, like, be a little bit different than everybody else? And, like, that's what makes each human unique. Like, if we were all the same, we would be pretty fucking boring, right? Like, none of us have the same beliefs. None of us have the same interests or values. Like, we're all different. So that's why I loved these books. They're just so beautifully written, and I cannot wait to read more from him. So I have to go now. I think I only have 6 more books to talk about when I come back, which is actually pretty good. I think I got through like 12. So that's actually pretty good. So I will talk about them later when I get home. So bye. Okay, so hey there, guys. So I'm back from seeing my friend, and I wanted to talk about the last 6 books that I read in March. I thought that my outfit still went with my eyeshadow, even though this is what I literally throw on every single day when I get home. So after I had finished Somewhere Beyond the Sea, I kind of wanted to keep like my good author's role going on, but also I wanted to go back to finish this series. And the reason why I delayed finishing this series for a while because I had read the first book back in February, at the beginning of February, tore my heart out, absolutely loved it. So I wanted to go back and finish this series. And also, this series was on my TBR for this month, and that is Frederick Bachman's. Oh my God, sorry. My Siri goes off every time I say series. And that is Frederick Bachman's Us Against You. So I did go back and finally pick up the second book in the Beartown trilogy. And honestly, I can't really tell you guys what these books are about. Just know that Frederick Bachman is probably one of my all-time favorite authors at this point, besides like TJ Klune. Of course, I love TJ Klune's books too. I was almost going to do a vlog where I read male authors for a week, but then I ended up just including this book in a continuing series I'm in the middle of, and I read this book along with Somewhere Beyond the Sea and also another book that I'm going to mention right after I talk about this one. So I'm just going to read the synopsis really quick because honestly, I couldn't really remember like the overall plot of this one because the way that these books are just fucking phenomenal though, because the way that these books just seamlessly tell a overall amazing story about these characters that you have been with for this incredibly heartbreaking journey of like, I could go on about these books for forever and I really don't want to because I'm never going to shut up about it and then this video is going to be 5 million years long. But I just wanted to say that there are so many layers to this story. There's so many layers to his characters. He is a genius. The way that he is able to introduce so many different characters, but somehow you don't get confused about following each of their storylines. You get like little bits and pieces about each character, but he keeps it very concise and very short. And literally, I've never seen a author use the power of a sentence so well than this man. Like, he really knows how to fucking gut you by just a fucking sentence. And he puts so much meaning into it. Like, there's so much politics that goes on in these books. There's so much, like, there is quite a lot of bullying. So I just wanted to say, check your trigger warnings if you decide to read these books. But honestly, I don't really understand how people cannot take away something from this series. Like, if you just stick with it, or if you just read the first book, if you just read Beartown, there is no way that you can walk away from this series without it having some kind of really huge mental impact on you if you really understand what this story is about. So basically, this one says, after everything that the citizens of Beartown have gone through, they are struck yet another blow when they hear that their beloved local hockey team will soon be disbanded. What makes it worse is the obvious satisfaction that all the former Beartown players who now play for a rival team in head take in that fact. Amidst the mounting tension between the two rivals, a surprising newcomer is handpicked to be Beartown's new hockey coach. So basically, Peter has to step down as the Beartown coach. And basically, like, after the event that happened in the first book, like the crime that was committed in the first book, it basically, like, really tears up Peter's family, like Peter and Kira and their daughter and their son. They're, basically, like, Maya and Kira's relationship got way stronger, but like Peter and his son's relationship, and also like his relationship with his wife, was kind of like skating on thin ice. Oh my God, I just realized that because it's about a hockey team. I don't know if anyone's ever made that realization, but that makes, I mean, it's such a cliche saying, but that makes so much sense to say it that way. I mean, if you read the series, you'll understand, but wow, wow. Okay. Anyway, the scenes that I read about Peter feeling basically he's not needed anymore as because he's not really working like his passion anymore. Like hockey was his whole fucking life. He was obsessed with it. Then he decides he wants to work for his wife and he wants to do human resources. But Kira keeps on saying that he's not very good at his job. But he doesn't really know that. But also, like, he's struggling to just have a connection with his wife and with his son. Like, his daughter still, like, you know, tries to keep up a relationship with him. But there are so many heartbreaking scenes about Peter that literally ripped my heart out because, again, there's so many amazing themes in this book that we go through, you know, in the different stages of our lives is basically like the way that he explained that like a parent feels like they're not needed as like their children get older or they become like more independent, especially when kids are teenagers. That's like the toughest time to like raise a kid. Believe me, my brother, and my sister were all teenagers at the same time, and we were all fucking impossible. Just the way that he thinks, like he wants to give up, and it's just so fucking heartbreaking to read. And then basically like the new hockey coach like invites him to go look at a new player, and basically she makes him feel needed again. I don't know if that was in the first book or the second book or the third book. And then he like has a, you know, basically use to somebody again. It was just like so heartbreaking to read about. I was crying my eyes out at Peter's scenes. Like he really just gut wrenched me. And Benji had left the town after the thing that occurred in the first book. And basically he just tries to numb himself all the time, but also like he doesn't want to relive everything that happened in Beartown. So he keeps on like drinking and doing drugs and everything. And he basically like doesn't want to amount to anything. Poor Benji is all I'm going to say. And then with Maya, she had also left the town as well and decided to go to music school because she couldn't stay in Beartown. And Anna basically is Maya's best friend. She stays with her alcoholic father, and she has to constantly help him. But Anna's such a fucking badass. I love her. She is such a strong character. And the way that he, like, introduces, like, different points of view from, like, more so side characters in the first book, and now they have more of a role in the second book, is just so seamlessly done. I just love his writing. It's so good. And then at the end of this book, another tragedy happens, and unfortunately, a citizen of Beartown ends up being killed. So, which it didn't really upset me because I didn't really guess this, but also like after I read the third book, then I understood why this happened. Like you kind of like try to guess who it's going to be because he foreshadows literally everything. But the way that he does it so fucking cleverly, and also he repeats lines and themes so much that he kind of just like engraves it into your brain where it's not like annoying. It's like, no, you're not going to forget this because this is going to have a huge impact on you once you finish this book. Because I was literally devastated after I finished this one. So I was like, I think I need the complete opposite read right now. So I ended up picking up a mood read, but also this was finishing another series Granted, it's just a romance duology, but I was like, I need a little bit of a palate cleanser. But this literally only took me a day to finish this book, and that is Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. So this is the second book in the next series. I really liked this book over the first one. I thought that this one was way funnier. I thought it was just really, really cute. And I just had a really good time reading this one. It was definitely smuttier, but their like smut like kind of made sense because they were like best friends to like friends with benefits to lovers. So I don't know. I thought that was cute. I've never really read like a friends with benefits romance before. I don't think I have. Like it wasn't really like, I guess they were good friends, but they weren't like best friends. So I don't know. I just really liked the way that this story was told. So it's about Lane and her friend Matt. And basically Matt is friends with like Warren, which is, the love interest in the first book. Did I say that Warren and Chloe ended up developing a relationship? Well, they're actually together in this book. And Lane is like one of Chloe's best friends. And Lane has always had trouble like leaving the house. She's very closed off. She's almost like agoraphobic. She takes medication for it. And basically she decides that she doesn't want to live in like a like singular place anymore. So she decides that she wants to build a bus so she can like, travel the country and like not have to stay in the same house all the time. She kind of wants to get over her fear of her agoraphobia, and basically Matt helps her build the bus. And Matt is a very like overly giving person where he will bend over backwards for someone to help somebody. But also he'll do that where like he'll kind of ignore like his own feelings. But basically like their relationship develops, and then they kind of got into the smut like a little bit over 100 pages in. I'm like, oh, okay, they're already hooking up because, they're like, we both want to do this. So, but then like Lane realizes that she likes him a little bit too much, and the same thing with Matt. But Lane like starts pushing him away, and she obviously knows that she can't, that she knows that she's going to end up being with him, but she keeps on punishing herself for like an event that occurred like a long time ago, like with her parents, that she thinks that if she gets too close to somebody, it's going to end up being bad, and she wants to like prevent herself from really caring about somebody. It was just really, really good. I really enjoyed this one. Again, I thought this one was so much funnier than the first book. And it's like the reverse experience that I had with Out on a Limb and Out of the Woods, even though I really liked Out of the Woods. And that's probably my second favorite book by Hannah Bonham Young, and this is my third, and then Next of Kin is 4. Out on a Limb is definitely my favorite book from Hannah Bonham Young. And then I ended up completing her backlist reading this book, because I only had 4 books to read from her. The only other book that I haven't read from her is her Christmas novella, but I ended up completing the 4 novels that she's written before her new release comes out in May. So I thought that was an accomplishment, and that's why I just wanted to get to this book, and also I wanted to put this book in the continuing series I'm in the middle of, and I just wanted to finish it because I knew it would take like no time. It was just really cute. I really enjoyed it. Okay, and then I literally only took a day to finish and then go back to torture myself again, but I decided that I wanted to finish the Beartown series. And I went into Frederick Bachman's The Winners. This, you guys, this series was absolutely perfect. Oh, by the way, the entire Beartown trilogy is a 6-star trilogy for me, and each book is 6 stars for me. That is the highest that I've rated any books in any series ever. These books are fucking incredible. And the fact that these were the first books that I read from Frederick Bachman, I have no regrets. I think I'm going to take a break from him for quite a while though. But I do want to read Anxious People at some point. So basically in this book, it is 2 years after what has happened in Us Against You. I think Us Against You takes place like a couple months later or maybe like a year later. But I know like some time has passed. And basically this one starts with like a big storm that is happening in the town. And also in the second and the third book, God, there's like the themes that this man ingrains into your brain, and you try to think about like how this is going to connect with something like violent happening, because all of the books in this series are like an extreme amount of buildup to the violence that is going to happen, and that's why it ends up being so heartbreaking. So basically this book starts out with a huge storm, and it's from the perspectives of like of Peter's family in Beartown, but also we are now following a family in Head, and Head is the rival town to Beartown. Like, they're the rival hockey league. They're basically the two best hockey leagues in the area that they live in. And he keeps on like repeating the theme in all of these books, saying that hockey is not politics. Hockey isn't political. It's just hockey. Why can't you just let these kids play hockey? So, of course, it ends up being super fucking political. And the corruption that goes on in this book is fucking unreal. And the fact that like all of these things build up to the reason why there is such violence in these towns, but also there are like little bits of like Head residents and Beartown residents having to like come together and help each other out in like this storm that is happening. Like Anna ends up picking up this lady that is from Head. I forget her name, but basically she's like the mom of like the family that we're following in Head. And it's just, oh my God, it's so fucking good. And she has to go rescue this lady that ends up being in labor because she is a midwife. So she has to help her deliver her baby in this fucking storm and try to get her to the hospital. So Anna picks her up and takes her ass to take this pregnant lady to the hospital. But Anna's from Beartown and she's trying to get home or something. And this lady is from Head, but they come together so they can help people when they're in danger. And like, that is such a common theme that happens in America these days, where they pit, you know, Republicans and Democrats and Trumpsters against each other all the fucking time. But when push comes to shove, when there's a natural disaster that happens, people are going to come together and help that person out. They're not going to like stand next to you and ask you, oh, who did you vote for in the election? Oh, fuck you, you can die. Like, that's what politicians think that we're going to do. Because that, you know, after like all the wildfires that happened in California, basically, you know, Trump abandoned people in California saying that you guys don't need aid. I'm not going to help you. It's up to the states. That's basically like the theme of this book was with like the political corruption. But there's also so many layers to the political corruption that happens in this fucking book. But basically, this all builds up to a massively or could have been a massively violent event that happened towards the end of the book. But unfortunately, someone that we have been with the entire trilogy ends up being killed. And it was absolutely devastating. I was crying for a good 15 minutes after I finished this book. I was crying before the event happened because I was like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. And then it turned out it was less deaths than I thought. But the deaths that did happen were fucking devastating. So, and the way that he like talks about like how we numb ourselves when these things happen. Because, a shooting happens because, basically these people have been ignored like their whole life. It's just, and like no one has fucking helped them because they've been abused and they've always been like pushed to the side. It's just amazingly written. And the storm buildup of not just an actual storm happening, but like the shitstorm that's going to happen for the hockey league, the shitstorm that's going to happen in the town with the violence. Like everything just ties together and it's so fucking amazingly well written. I just absolutely loved this series. I could go on about it forever, but I'm not going to. So now we're just going to jump into the next book I ended up reading. I just ended up mood reading the last week of March because I'm like, but I'm literally going to like rant about these books for the next like 20 minutes. Hold on one second. So I've only been talking for an hour, so let me wrap this up. So I decided to pick up something the complete opposite because I was like, I don't know what the fuck to read after reading this masterpiece of a series. That I'm like, I just need to pick something up that I'm really in the mood for, or I'm not going to want to read anything because I was in a serious book hangover after I finished it. So I decided to pick up Ali Hazelwood's Not in Love. Now, this is one of the last books that I needed to read from Ali Hazelwood. And then after this, I only have Love on the Brain, and that's literally it. Then I will have read all of her books. But I seem to be a fan of more of her STEM romances than her other romance books that, that she decides to branch off into different categories, because I seem to like her STEM romances way more. Can I fucking speak? I did originally put this on my April TBR, but I'm like, no, I've been wanting to read this book for months now. And I hadn't read an Ali Hazelwood book this month yet, so I was like, I really want to read this one. I really, really enjoyed this one, you guys. I gave this a 4.25 out of 5 stars. I still have not found a 5-star read by Ali Hazelwood. Maybe the sequel to this will give me a 5-star, but also I didn't really want to read too many back-to-back STEM romances from Ali Hazelwood because I now only have 2, because I'm going to obviously read the sequel of this when it comes out, but I didn't want to read like both of them back to back at the same time. So I was like, let me read this now. Love on the Brain, maybe I'll read in April or like sometime in May, or maybe I'll just read it after I read the sequel to this. But anyway, the 2 main characters in this are Rue and Eli, and basically Eli works for like this big science company. Like it's always like the same kind of plot or overall plot that happens in each one of Ali Hazelwood's STEM romances, where like the guy always works for like a rival company that the girl the girl works for, that the guy wants to take over. So basically Rue has always been they've both been like abused in the past, like emotionally. There's a lot of child neglectment. So I do check your trigger warnings for this, but she does give a trigger warning at the beginning of this. So basically, Rue is supposed to meet Eli for like a hookup, and she like texts him on this like hookup app. And basically the way that Eli meets Rue is that this guy is basically like harassing her, and he sees that she's being bothered by this dude, and he basically gets him to go away from her, and their plans of like hooking up doesn't really work out, and she's like, how am I supposed to trust you? Like, and And he's like, you can't really, but also at the same time, like, why would I save you if you couldn't trust me? So, he basically like offers her a ride and he takes her back to her home because they don't end up hooking up in the hotel that they're supposed to go to. And basically, she, tells him, like, no, you can't come inside with me, but she does give him like a kiss. And then she goes inside and basically he becomes like really obsessed with her after this. Like, it almost kind of reminded me of like a lighter version of Lights Out. No pun intended. But like his personality kind of reminded me of the of the main character Josh in Lights Out. And I thought it was really funny and I thought it was just well done. But also I really enjoyed like the romance between Rue and Eli way more than the way that she did Deep End, because it was like this one was definitely very smutty and it was erotica, but like you were more so looking forward to those scenes because there was so much like emotionally between them and they had a serious emotional connection. As compared to Deep End, where it's like you didn't really get that background about these characters, and also like it was so awkward the way that they ended up being together, and also even the erotica scenes like annoyed me because there was so much buildup, and like they were not as hot as these scenes in this book, all right? These scenes were hot. And the build up to these and the way that like, he would tell her like what he likes and what she likes, because they didn't just do vanilla stuff. They were doing more than that. It was hot, all right? And I don't know why, even though Deep End was marketed that way as an erotica, it didn't really do what this book did. And also, this book came out before Deep End. So I'm like, why is it that this one was better written than Deep End? But anyway, I really enjoyed this one. And again, I seem to be more of a fan of her STEM romances than like Deep End, Bride, and Check and Mate are like my least favorite books from her, and Love Theoretically and Not in Love are my two favorite books from her, and then Love Hypothesis. So, like I said, with the way that she writes her STEM romances, they're formulaic, but they work. So I really just felt very emotionally connected to these two characters, probably even more so than the characters in Love Theoretically, but I just thought Love Theoretically was so funny and so cleverly written, and that's why I liked that one a little bit more. But I really liked this one. So, and then the last physical book I ended up finishing, and I just finished this book yesterday. This book was so freaking cute, you guys. Even though I ended up reading another book trying to finish it before this one that I wasn't really enjoying, that I was like, if I don't pick up a book that I'm in the mood for, I fear that I'm going to fall into a reading slump. And I was like, for me, I don't really fall into reading slumps. And what I do is that if I am feeling like that, I just pick up something that I really want to read. So I decided to pick up Summer in the City by Alex Astor. You guys, I freaking loved this book. This was so freaking adorable. I gave this a 5 stars. From beginning to end, I was giggling, I was laughing, I was smiling. I thought it was just so adorable. And this is actually the first 5-star that I gave to one of Alex Astor's books, because I've read the entire Light Lark series, that I almost thought that this was out of like a little bit of left field from her. But the fact that she can write romance so well, because I'm sure that she probably romantasy authors, they're pretty good at writing romance as well, because like even though people are like, why is she writing a romance book, when it's like romantasy is all about the romance, set in a fantasy world. So it's like, this is still a fictional world. But anyway, this was just so cute. I loved this so much. And this was actually a billionaire romance when I actually haven't really read any billionaire romances before, but this was so well done. And I actually thought a billionaire romance was something that I wasn't going to enjoy, but this was so adorable. So it's about a girl named Elle and a man named Parker. And basically, Parker is a billionaire, and Elle has to basically, she met Parker a couple of years ago before the present plot takes place at like a club. And they end up like, kissing, and he wants to like, take her home and whatever. And she misreads like what he says to her, and she thought that he was trying to buy her off or like buy her romance because, he like threw money at something and he kind of misinterpreted what he was saying. So a couple of years, I think it was like 18 months or something. And Elle has recently moved to LA or somewhere there because like that's where her sister is. Well, that's where her sister is for the summer because she ends up like working a job there. But her sister is also pregnant. So Elle has to go to New York City to house sit her sister's apartment because she has a job somewhere else. So she meets Parker because Parker lives like basically next door to her. And she is like writing this, she is a screenplay writer, and it's funny like how many screenplay romances that I gave 5 stars to, which was the rom-commers, and this one I just seem to love them. She is basically writing a screenplay, and she is like basically a rom-com screenwriter, and she is kind of like having writer's block. She's not really having inspiration. So basically every time she encounters Parker, for some reason he like ignites like this spark in her to start writing again. I was about to say start reading again. And he makes this deal with her saying, I will help you get out of your writer's block if you agree to date me for the summer. Like, be my date to like these certain events that I have to attend. Being a billionaire CEO, he's obviously going to be like a public face, and he like donates to like a bunch of charities and stuff like that. And of course, that ends up developing a romance, and I don't know, just like this was just so well done. This was definitely a quality time acts of service romance because the most important thing in romances is how much time the characters spend with each other. But I also think that is probably like my favorite kind of romance reads to read. And also, of course, acts of service, because Abby Jimenez is the queen of acts of service. But this was just so good. And also it has a blurb from Allie Hazelwood on top. And I just think this was adorable. It says, Parker, I say, not recognizing my voice. It's just a husky rasp. He leans forward like he can't help himself. Our foreheads pressed together. We're just barely touching, and it's not enough. I want to be far closer. He must see the one all over my face because he says, Elle, you hate me, remember? She says, I do. I say, nodding. I hate you so much. It was just adorable. It felt like I was reading a movie, but also the like nods to like the nostalgia, like first off, the taxi sprayed edges from the Barnes & Noble edition is adorable, and then it has this such a cute map of a lot of the stores in the city. Of course, it's the Barnes & Noble in Union Square, which I've been to quite a few times. They also spent some time on the High Line, which I've also been to as well. I'm born and raised in Long Island, so the way that she wrote about the city is definitely someone that did their research, but also Alex Astor spends so much time at that Barnes & Noble in Union Square. It's just like the way that she wrote about New York was just so atmospheric. And also, like, I had just went to New York City like a couple of days ago to meet one of my friends, and I haven't been to the city in like 5 months. sometimes the city can be really crazy, especially after an election, you know? So I tend to avoid the city until it like dies down, you know, like 5 months later. And I decided to pick up this book like a couple of days ago, and then I was like, oh, this is literally perfect for me to start reading now because I'm literally going to the city like the next day. So I was like, might as well pick up a book about New York City, and it was great. I absolutely loved it. Okay, and then the last book that I finished, finally, I actually finished it on the same day as I finished Summer in the City because I only had like 100 pages of that left. This book took me literally like a month and a half to finish, you guys, because I started reading it at the beginning, like the second week of February, and then I got like 15% into it, and then I ended up receiving another arc, and I ended up reading that arc over this one, which was Promise Me Sunshine by Cara Bastone. I finally finished A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, and this was the first arc that I actually ever received. And this is the second book in the Shadow of the Leviathan series. And I wanted to finish it at least before it came out, because it literally comes out basically today, because it's technically April 1st now. But this book just was not the same as the first book, you guys. It didn't have the same kind of suspense. It didn't have the same kind of like edge of your seat action and adventure and mystery plot to it. Even though the first book was a little bit predictable, I don't know, it was just way funnier and it was just way more entertaining. With this one, I just felt like it dragged to get to something that would happen in this book. Even though there were murders happening, I felt like we were just dwelling on the same thing for just way too long. So it's about Anna and Din again, and basically they have to find out what the drop of corruption is and how it's killing these people, because in the first book you obviously find out what the tainted cup is and what kind of liquid it is and whatever. So basically it says, before long, Anna's discovered that they're not investigating a disappearance but a murder, and that the killing was just the first chess move by an adversary who seems to be able to pass through warded doors like a ghost, and who can predict every one of Anna's moves as though they can see the future. Worse still, the killer seems to be targeting the high-security compound known as the Shroud. Now, it does sound very interesting when you read the synopsis, but I kind of felt the same way reading the synopsis as I did reading This Woven Kingdom. When I actually read the books, the synopsis sounded more interesting than the actual books did, because like I said, I thought those books just dragged, and I don't know, I felt like it wasn't like overly descriptive. I just felt like it took forever to get somewhere and forever to get to something. And there were like a few bits of action that happened, and like it's finally started picking up around like, I think like the 40% mark or something. But I don't know, I was just never really that invested in this one. And I can't even really tell you what else happened because I didn't really care. And also, it is the second book in a series, so I gave it a 3.25 out of 5 stars. Basically, I ended up putting this down and picking up other books on my March TBR, but then finally decided to go back to this because I wanted to finish it before it comes out. But I don't know, I really just could not care about the story and found it very predictable this time and very repetitive. It wasn't like the first book where it was so funny and you were on blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I basically just said the same thing. But I did feel like this book was a lot of setup for the next book in the series. So I am going to read the next book. But I just felt like this one was very stagnant. But basically she was investigating the Shroud and trying to figure out who killed and beheaded this person in a bank in the like first murder of this book. And basically it just went from there. That's all I have to tell you. Also, there was way less fantasy in this book. There really was like 0 to none. And also, like, it didn't really show like the way that Anna solve the cases in like a fantasy kind of way like she did in the first book. It was almost like you just didn't really care enough. So I don't know. It was just kind of fell flat for me. So yeah, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Follow me on my Instagram at CBW819 and check out my Poshmark at the same handle. So I am currently reading Nightweaver by R.M. Gray, and this is also a new release from March, and I decided to pick this up because first off, it's freaking stunning, but this is a YA mermaid pirate celestial fantasy. And I was like, say less, with monsters. And so far, I'm only 63 pages in. I'm about to read some more because I didn't really get to read as much as I would have liked to today. But also, I'm going to take my time with books a little bit more this month and not like pressure myself to finish a million books. I'm just going to finish the books that I'm going to be able to finish. But also I felt that if I hadn't picked up another March release, I don't want to like build up my backlist of new releases every single month. So I'm like, I might as well pick up another new release before April because Say You'll Remember Me literally comes out tomorrow. So I just really wanted to start reading this. And also, I wish I would have started reading this the same week as This Woven Kingdom because this book is so good so far, you guys. It jumped immediately into the action and I am so gripped already. That this was like the YA fantasy that I needed because like honestly I was struggling with fantasy this month. Like yes, The Scorpion and the Night Blossom was really good and House of the Cerulean Sea was fantastic, but I just wanted some high stakes action packed fantasy and I think that it's gonna be this. So out of the new releases that I read this month, I read The Scorpion, the Night Blossom. I also read Promise Me Sunshine because I read that back in February. I read Summer in the City, and then I also read The Hollow Hunt because it technically was supposed to come out in March, but it's not coming out until April, but it was still available like basically on the release date that it was supposed to be from Barnes & Noble. But meanwhile, you can't pre-order it until it wasn't coming out until April 1st on Barnes & Noble and on Kindle, and then A Drop of Corruption I was able to read before April. So if I wasn't able to read A Drop of Corruption and The Hollow Hunt before April, I think I would have had 8 new releases to read. Because we have Say You'll Remember Me, we have Fearless, we have Encantra, we have Great Big Beautiful Life, we have Watch Me, and then I would have had those 2. So maybe like 7. So yeah. Anyway, and then I'm currently reading Nightweaver, so I think I got to 4. And then I'm also listening to You Killed Me First by John Mars. I just started listening to that today, and so far it's really good, and that also came out on March 4th. So I think I'm reading like all the books that came out on March 4th, and then Summer in the City came out March 25th. So yeah, let me know what you're reading this month, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and keep reading. Bye!